We have met the heroic, we have met the stubborn General Sherman, and we have met the heroic and intelligent Colonel Peabody. But tomorrow morning, we are going to meet my good buddy, Colonel Jesse J. Appler of the 53rd Ohio Regiment. So we're not going to talk much tonight about Colonel Appler, but I do want to introduce you to this ground, because it's going to be important tomorrow. I told you that Ray Field is a long, narrow field. You're in it now. Look that direction. You can see the modern tree line. The historic tree line was down by that bridge. That's how far Ray Field was open. And if you were there by the 53rd Ohio's monument, as General Sherman was early the next morning, we'll talk about it, you could look through your glass and you could see all the way down to the end of that field, and you could see Confederates passing across that field. But on the night of April 5th, Colonel Appler's regiment was camped here in the Ray Field. 644 men in the camp. The regiment is divided into 10 companies. Each of the companies lines up their Sibley tents on a company street. So in this field, this would be the color line where we've mowed it. And each of the 10 companies would be 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way down to the end. Colonel Appler would have posted sentries to keep his men in the camp. He would have put sentries over around the Ray farms, the buildings of the Ray farm where he had his hospital. Strike that. Colonel Appler didn't do that. Some of Colonel Appler's subordinates took it upon themselves to do that. Colonel Appler wasn't the kind of guy who figured that part out yet. But Colonel Appler did know that there was something going on out there. Colonel Appler had been drilling his troops beyond the end of the field, just like the other regiments, all day on the 5th. And he had looked down at the end of the field where we walked over the bridge and saw horsemen in butternut dress watching him as if they were watching a Sunday parade just beyond the picket line. He sent some people to ask them what they were about. At the approach of these gentlemen, the gentlemen on the horses turned around and disappeared into the woods. So they saw what was going on out there. But what do they do with the information? If I step into a dark street at night and I see lights coming my way, I move fast. The deer does the same thing. You got $1,000 worth of front end damage. An army is an organism. It has a brain, not just the commander's brain, but an organic brain. It has to take in information. It has to synthesize information. It has to understand information. And it has to act on information, and this is what the Army calls intelligence. Military intelligence doesn't mean whether you're smart or not. It means whether the organism of the Army understands what it's looking at and responds to it. General Sherman saw what was in front of him. He did not understand it. Part of that was part of his character. As one of you just said to me, General Sherman may have been wrong, but he was always certain. So part of it was his character. Part of it was his history. This is crazy Sherman, whose career has been saved by the good graces of his friend, General Halleck. Part of it is Sherman's contempt, as it will turn out in some cases, a deserved contempt for the leadership of his volunteer soldiers. These men like Colonel Appler, who was a stonemason 2 months ago, and now he's a colonel commanding 640 men, and not doing it very well. He He has also been deprived of an important part of his command due to an Army administrative decision. Perhaps we could call it a snafu now. But his good cavalry was taken, and he was left without cavalry for a period of 24 hours, the exact 24 hours he would have needed it to discover what was out there. It was because of some violation of orders in Prentice's division that to a degree the Union Army was not surprised. Or rather, I should say, they were not astonished and dug out of their tents at the bayonet point. As the reporters said after the battle, as you still hear sometimes. Peabody's reconnaissance found the Confederates. Prentice chewed out Peabody. Sherman listened to what was going on out there. Sherman listened to the wounded men who had blood to show as evidence that the general might be mistaken. General Sherman rode out to the place where the 53rd Ohio Monument is, raised up his glass to his eye at a little before 7 in the morning and saw waves of Confederates moving across that long, narrow field and disappearing into the woods behind Colonel Appler's regiment. And while he was watching that, Lieutenant Eustace Hale Ball of Portsmouth, Ohio, Company E of the 53rd Regiment, was in that wood line over there. We'll tell this story tomorrow. Lieutenant Ball sees Confederate skirmishers emerging from these trees within feet of General Sherman as he gathers intelligence at the other end of the field. Ball runs at Sherman, waving his hat, "General, General, look to your right." General Sherman looked to his right as Confederate skirmishers raised their rifles at him. He threw up his hands, shouted, "My God, we are attacked!" The Confederates fired, killing an orderly sitting next to Sherman and putting a piece of buckshot through Sherman's hand.
Is that why they say Sherman was wounded?
That's where Sherman was wounded. Buckshot through his hand. My God, we are attacked. It was late, but he got it. And tomorrow morning, we will meet here. We'll begin talking about that terrible battle that followed General Sherman's wake-up call. Thank you very much. Welcome to Shiloh National Military Park. We're at the beginning of 3 days of fun. 3 days of marching through mud holes and through briars, and I look forward to a lot of it with you.